You know those experiences that we have in our lives where they cause us to totally shift our perspective on something, or maybe even the way we live our lives, the way we see our lives. I had one of those that changed my whole orientation towards prayer. It was my experience of being called into ministry. I heard a talk by a Unity minister named Brian Graham who said, if you want to know what God's will is for you, just ask. And I was clearly in the place to hear that. It was my talk. You know how that goes. And I started that very next day before my meditation time in the morning, just quietly to myself, acknowledging, I'm ready to hear it. And on the third day, I heard a voice coming out of my meditation, as clear as a bell, say, you are to be a minister. That was pretty cool. But that actually wasn't the experience that caused the shift. It was about 3.5 years later when I was ordained and in my first church, totally challenged, didn't know what I was doing, had been put through a seminary program that stretched me and invited me to grow like nothing else. So I'm trying to get the point across that it wasn't necessarily easy. And yet I can remember sitting at my desk and realizing, wow, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. And it was such a stark contrast. I was raised in unity, and in the unity that I was raised in, unity like everything else is evolving. The unity I was raised in, while they would have stressed that you're supposed to listen for guidance, it was much more about creating. So I know for me, I'm not sure I listened to much guidance at all as I was a kid. I was taught that if I held the right idea and my focus was correct and I didn't say words outside of that idea, if I kept speaking into to what I wanted, that I could have what I wanted. And I diligently did that for almost 30 years before I received this calling. The thing was that nothing quite hit the mark. These were ideas that I had about what should bring me happiness, what should bring a sense of fulfillment. What I wasn't understanding was they were also being informed by my ego, or maybe the deficiency that was caught in my ego, that said I needed to create value, that I needed to make myself something. And while I achieved, while things manifested, I never felt quite satisfied. So it really caught my attention when this guidance that I received suddenly left me feeling like I had found it, or it had found me. We're talking about prayer today, and we've been using Ellen Davenport's book, The 5 Principles. We're working through Unity's 5 basic teachings, 5 basic principles. The first one is there's only one presence and one God. The second is that we each are individualized, unique expressions of that one presence. The third is that we co-create with God through this activity of our mind, through not only our thoughts, but the beliefs we hold, both conscious and subconscious. And then today, we're looking at connecting with the source, connecting with that presence in order to be informed, if you will, and to be in alignment with the support that is Spirit within us, our true nature. And one of the things that Ellen says about my experience was that I was discontent, and that discontent acts as a pointer to our soul's desire. Remember, Brian Graham said, if you want to know what God's will for you is, well, Ellen phrases it that each of us, our souls, have a desire, or a series of desires, if you will, that they're wanting to have come manifest in the world. And of course, we have beliefs and fears and everything that can block that. So the universe is always unfolding a life that is bringing us closer and closer to us being able to live, to manifest our soul's desires. Well, I was discontent in my job. It was one of the best jobs I've had, but I knew my time there was coming to an end, and I felt pretty clearly that I didn't want to just go get another job in the same field I was in. I wanted something more. And so that discontent, coupled with my sufficient enough trust to surrender and to say, I don't know what it is. I'm open to being guided. Allowed this message to come through. Allowed the guidance to come through. Allowed my prayer to be answered in a real way. The change that happened in my prayer was that suddenly this idea that I could pray for something that I of myself knew what was best for me, it suddenly seemed crazy. I'd been working to manifest what I thought was going to make me happy for nearly 30 years, and when I finally sort of say, I give up, what is it? And I receive some guidance, and it lands so square on for me, something that, I mean, I would have never guessed in a million years that I was to be a minister. You know, I was on the CPA track, not ministry. Suddenly, I had no desire to influence this soul desire, if you will. I wanted to know what it was. And so my prayer time became very silent. I might open it with the words of Debbie Tyson, one of my instructors in seminary. I just love these words. Reveal what needs to be revealed. Heal what needs to be healed. So that I'm no longer blocking. I want more of this. And so I have sort of an odd prayer life. When I sit down with a prayer list that I mentioned earlier, it's published every Tuesday, and I have my own prayer list. When I sit down with those, I read through the names, but I don't say anything about them. I don't hold any particular idea. I don't really even have many goals in my life anymore. I'm really just holding space. After I've read the names, just allow myself to quiet. What inevitably opens up for me now is a very spacious, still, black space. A space where I know that Spirit is working hard in my life, working hard in everyone else's life. I'm holding the space for something greater to manifest. And for whatever it is that stands in the way for any of you on my list, to gently be moved aside. Ellen, in the book, says, the most effective prayer of all might be wordless, a period of silence to align ourselves with all that is and return to the wholeness that is our nature. A period of silence to align with all that is and return to the wholeness that is our nature. So well put. And the Tao Te Ching says, bide in silence, and the radiance of the Spirit shall come in and make its home. Abide. Allow yourself to settle in silence and the radiance of the Spirit shall come in and make its home. And then the book of Matthew, your Father knows what you need before you ask him. What more do we need than to be told? Well, we need faith, right? We need to be able to trust that. And so often it is that, difficulty that we have trusting it. Our whole ego structure is based on, wait a minute, I need to take care of me. When it comes down to it, I'm the only one here for me. And so that trust can be hard. And it's important to recognize that we are all at different places in our journey and to be okay with that. And to understand that our prayers will be unique to us based on where we are. However, I want to caution you about praying to some entity outside of yourself. It's so easy for the mind to make an image of God, for example. And we find in our prayer life then that we are praying to this image to grant us favors, if you will, to save us, to finally make our life okay. And that leaves us powerless. We're simply waiting for this God. I loved a quote that I came across from Robert Brummett, one of my instructors in seminary and also an author in Unity. Fear is faith turned inside out. Fear is having faith in certain images created by the mind rather than having faith in the creative power of the mind itself. And I wish that mind was capitalized. Having faith in the creative power of the one mind, of this greater force that is at play, always at play in our lives, never abandons us. And so you can see, if we aren't putting our focus on our nature, then it's easy for the mind to develop fearful images that are of the world outside of us having greater influence than the Spirit within us that is always working to come forward as us. And so when we have these images then of this God that's going to rescue us, then, we say things like, we've seen this, right? We've seen where there's natural disasters and people have escaped them, and they say, I was spared by God. Well, that's well and good, but what about all the people that died? Had they fallen into disfavor with this external God? That really doesn't make any sense. And yes, it's a mystery. I don't have the answer as to why some people seem to die prematurely. It's as much of a mystery to me as it is to anyone else. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are plenty of people in the world that think they have that all figured out, don't they? And that those people have done something wrong that brought them into the negative favor with God. I don't believe that. I believe that there is only one presence and one power. That presence loves us so much that it is always unfolding a life to show us where we're still holding on to lack and limitation, but also to invite us into ever greater experience of life. And so at times, we all need reminding of our nature. We all need reminding to come back to this orientation of wait a minute, life is lived from the inside out. And so in Unity, we encourage you to practice affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer is where we're being reminded of the truth of who we are. I like what Ellen says in the book. In affirmative prayer, we're remembering who we truly are as expressions of the eternal life force on earth. And we are making time to align our thoughts and feelings with our highest good. We affirm our well-being, that our needs are filled, and that there is no lack in the universe. Isn't that beautiful? We affirm. I see that Bonnie has more on there than what I intended. So I'm still going to stay with what I think is the most powerful. We are reminded that we are truly expressions of an eternal life force on earth. I love that. Now, it's interesting that that's a good reminder. It's probably divine order that Bonnie left that on there, because it goes on, doesn't it, to say that every thought and every feeling is a prayer. That's such a great reminder for all of us. And certainly, we've all met people whose thoughts and the words they utter seem to really be in some kind of negative relationship with what we know to be the truth, that there is only one presence and one power, and that presence is good. And yet, even that can't really be used to explain what happens in life. I mean, one of the most curmudgeon-y people I ever knew in my whole life lived to 100 years old, so it didn't kill him. And while they seemed to miss every single blessing that happened in their life, they continued on. And so the opportunity is that we get to move into alignment with the good as we remember. And I particularly appreciated an example of affirmative prayer. I have my own insecurities about affirmative prayer. I think I'm learning to do it better, but this is a very fine example of affirmative prayer. The healing power of the divine flows through my body. I am health. I am wholeness. I am healed. The healing power of God works through the doctors, nurses, and medications. I'm restored to my natural state of health. I'm grateful for my healthy body and for the gifts of this experience. That's one beautiful prayer, especially when it ends the gifts of this experience, because that is the invitation to get out of the way, isn't it? And to allow the experience that we're having right now, to trust it, to understand that it's always inviting us into seeing something or stepping out in some greater way. I laughed about this last week, but I'm sure some of the metaphysicians in the church that I grew up, Unity of Des Moines, would have said that my life was going to go to hell in a handbasket if I did not start affirming what I wanted, if I didn't put it out there in prayer, if I didn't have goals. And yet what absolutely astounds me is that I am continually invited into greater and bigger opportunities of ministry, of finding out who and what I am, what I'm capable of as this living expression of spirit. And so I invite you to understand that prayer can be used in many ways, whatever ways that you would like. But the opportunity is to use it as a reminder of who and what you are as the living expression of spirit, to reconnect you with your true nature. That it's not imperative that you be putting out to the universe exactly what you want and only speaking words that support that, as much as it is your willingness to see what's blocking this longing of your soul to come into expression. This beautifully attuned, something that will bring you a sense of fulfillment like you've never had. It requires that we not only pray, but we be willing to take the deep dive to see what are the blocks, what is being shown me through my life, what is this amazing loving spirit pointing to in my life. You are truly amazing. And in this time of COVID, in this time of unrest in our culture, we're all being asked to be the expression of the light. Let that light shine. Open and connect with the nature that you are. Ellen has another beautiful meditation for us to move into a time of extended meditation. I'd like to invite you to take another deep breath and to allow yourself to settle in to where you are. That may be that there is some kind of resistance up to what I've just said. It's not always easy to hear that we're not as in charge as we think, that there's something at work in our life, working to bring us to all that we desire to be. And so I invite you to treat my words as if they were your own. In the stillness of my heart, I turn to God within. In my heart, I know my oneness with the divine. In my heart, I fear nothing, want nothing, lack nothing. In my heart, I rest in the awareness of God's unyielding presence, and I take pleasure in our communion. My soul is divine. My higher self is my access to God, the Christ in me. I am open for God on the earth. I am divine light and love flowing through me into the world. I surrender to this knowing, to this purpose, and to the blessing that floods my being as I allow the flow of Spirit in and through me. And so now we sit with those words, allowing the Spirit to flow through us. Gently allow yourselves to become back into the room.
Precious Spirit, we are free. God in you, God in me. Precious Spirit, let it be. God in you, God in me. Blessed Spirit, we are free. God in you, God in me. Blessed Spirit, let it be. God in you, God in me. Blessed Spirit, we are free. God in you, God in me. Blessed Spirit, let it be. Blessed Spirit, let it be.
Beautiful, Steve.